Okay, I would like to call to order this meeting of the Town Board of the Town of Northeast. It's July 14th, 2022, 7 o'clock. And I'd like to ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could you sign in, please? With the sign-in sheet. Thank you. Tilly, could you conduct a roll call, please?
Yes. Supervisor Cannon,
Here.
Councilwoman Morrison. Here. Councilman Fideli,
Here.
Councilman Midwood,
Here.
Councilman Cooper.
Thank you. The next item is the acceptance of the agenda. You all have a copy of the agenda. I would like to amend the agenda to include a section for public comment on agenda items only. We'll do that after the department and committee reports. So with the addition of that agenda item, I would like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, I forgot to say, I'm in favor.
Okay, the motion is carried. We're going to now have a couple of comments. Yours truly, as you all know, I have generally made it a point to begin our meetings with a comment about where we are with respect to COVID and our COVID numbers. They are relatively flat at the moment in Dutchess County. Currently, the number that they've been paying attention to now for the past at least half year is the number of cases in the county per 100,000 residents. And currently that number is at 29 per 100,000. It's way down from where it was at the end of 2021 when it was over 200 per 100,000. And it's been in a range of 10 to 35 or so for the past few months. The current varietal, as you probably all know, is reputed to be the most transmissible one yet. And as before, we encourage people to stay informed and to use their good judgment to protect themselves and the people around them. A couple of town activities. One, very quick mention, I went yesterday to the senior picnic, which was held over at Pine Plains. It is the first time that I've actually attended one of the senior picnics. I was struck by how many people have come out for them. It's put on by the county, and there were lots of people there from Millerton, from Stanford, Milan, Pine Plains. It was well attended by seniors as well as by various political candidates. The zoning review committee of the town continues its work on the commercial districts of the town, focusing in particular on the Route 44 Boulevard district. One of the issues under consideration is whether to create a sidewalk district for the boulevard, or whether simply to require any new developments on the boulevard to put in sidewalks. This is something that I think the board is going to want to become more familiar with and better educated about, and which we will also be looking for guidance from the zoning review committee. An update on I get a lot of questions about the grocery store, the need for a grocery store. So an update on that. There is work going on, as probably everybody has seen, on removing the underground tanks from the former gas station at the Millerton Plaza under the watchful eyes of New York State DEC. Cleaning up this site was an important requirement for any sale of the site. So I see it as a positive sign, positive step towards the eventual redevelopment of the site, and fingers crossed, a grocery store. The town has received a proposal from Habitat for Humanity of Dutchess County to purchase a parcel of town-owned land on Red Pond Road. It is 1/6 of an acre. Habitat for Humanity would like to see whether the site would permit it to construct a single-family home on the site. I've been invited to tour a Habitat home in Wappinger on July 28th, and I hope to be able to come back to the board with more information on how Habitat goes about its work for a board decision at our August meeting. The Conservation Advisory Committee, Rich Sulzer, who's here, is now the chair of the CAC and has mentioned to me that the CAC is looking for people who would be interested in working on conservation issues and joining that committee. People who are interested should reach out to Rich. And I want to thank Diane Engelke for her good work as the CAC's previous chair. Rich has also done a great deal of work on broadband and on assessing the gaps in broadband coverage in the town. And I've asked him if he would give the board an update on where we are at our August meeting. So we're looking forward to that. But I think it's fair to say from everything I've seen that the town of Northeast now knows more about where we don't have broadband coverage with specific addresses of where we don't have broadband coverage than any town around us. So I really appreciate the work that Rich and that committee has done. I mentioned before my interest and the interest of many of us in getting a parking lot up, off the rail trail at Rudd Pond. We've identified a potential site for that. We have put a lot of work into trying to develop that. I have met with Dutchess County DPW to see whether they would be able to help us make a parking lot there. And we are still in discussion with the landowner for that. I hope we will be successful with that and that there will be a parking lot which will probably look something like the parking lot down at Coleman Station, but providing access to the rail trail up at Red Pond Road. At the moment, as I think most people know, we have people parking all over the place, pushing baby carriages down the middle of the road, and it's not safe and it's not great. So looking forward to getting that to happen. Moving on to department and committee reports. Bob, I believe you have a report for us.
Sure. I have an amended 284 agreement for the board to consider. Section 1, general affairs, I would like to increase that from 225,000 to 275,000. I'm moving 50,000 from permanent improvements to general affairs. This will help cover the increase in asphalt prices, as you can imagine, anything related to fuels going up and up and up. Plus the hard winter we had with the repeated freeze thaw caused a lot of extra damage to the roads. So this will, 50,000 will help take care of some of that.
Mhm.
And section 2, number 2A, I've added Spencer Road, road reconstruction of 5 miles. This will improve drainage, reclaim stabilized base, complex paved 3 inches compacted, and install new gravel shoulders. The total cost is $108,251. That's all state aid.
Mhm. Okay, so you have that in hand.
We received notice from the state that that's guaranteed money for us.
Okay.
And last is 2B. It's, for the Irondale Road Drainage Improvement Project, which is complete. At a total cost of $65,800. It's just a formality so we can pay the bill later.
Right. Okay. is it the 286,
284 grand.
284 agreement? That has been distributed to the board, and I would like to ask the board for its approval to, for the revised 284 agreement.
So moved.
Okay, motion from Ralph,
Second.
seconded by Lana. Could you take a roll call vote on this, Tilly?
Yes. So Supervisor Cannon,
Aye.
Councilwoman Morrison. Aye. Councilman Fideli,
Aye.
Councilman Midwood,
Aye.
Councilman Cooper.
Aye.
Okay, so does that cover the work that you mentioned at the end on the approval of the Irondale Road? Or is that a separate item?
That's covered.
That is covered under our, we just voted on.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else to bring us up to date on? What are you working
We're
on?
very busy using the shared pavers and paving. We've spent most of this week on Sheffield Hill roads coming out nice.
Mhm.
Downfall, the shared roller broke down, so that's all being fixed. We had to rent one, so we can continue.
Mhm.
We
And
only have the pavers just for a certain amount of time, so we need to continue paving while we have it.
can you remind the board who we share the roller with?
Sure, the paver roller and trailer are shared with the town of Armenia, Mylan, and Brighton.
Right, this is one of many shared services agreements that I think are really beneficial to us. It means we don't have to own the roller, we just share the use of it. It's too bad that it decided to break down when it was with us.
Unfortunate. Things do happen.
Yeah. And what else do you have planned for the rest of the month?
August is oil and stone, drainage work, replace the culvert pipes, the Stunts Mission Road project, road construction, and hopefully maybe a string relocation if the nature cooperates.
All right, well, we'll see if we can put in a word with Mother Nature. That would be great. Does anybody on the board have any questions for Bob? Okay, thank you very much. Our assessor is not here
No.
and has no report. The report, Tilly has her town clerk report, which includes reports from the planning, zoning, and building departments. And do you have any other reports?
Well, yeah, I want to say all the reports were provided to the board members before the meeting, but I also provided a tax collection report, balancing and zeroing out the tax checking account, and unpaid tax rolls in the bank settlement were sent to Dutchess County Finance on June 27th. So that's all closed up now.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Tilly.
Thank you.
In terms of the town board committee activity, the highway committee, our work is continuing on the new highway garage site up on Route 22. We've gotten word from our engineers that they expect the contractor on the new highway garage expects to start pouring concrete foundations for that within the next couple of weeks. I think anybody who's driven by there has seen that there's been a lot of work already done, sort of digging out for the foundations for it. And for those of you who are not familiar with this project, it has been a long-term project of the town to build a new highway garage. And it is really something that if anybody has toured the old highway garage, it's pretty clear why this is something we needed to do. We have built a new sand and salt storage facility up there. We have another building which is closer to the road, which is an equipment storage, a cold equipment storage building. And then where the excavation is on the right-hand side of the entranceway into that site is where the actual highway garage will be. We've also applied for a grant to complete fencing around that site and are hopeful that we will hear something about that any day now. Is there any report from Recreation Committee?
No, not at this time.
No, okay. And anything on cemetery that's new, Ralph?
Well, the Friends of the Spencer's Corners Burying Ground
had a meeting planned this week, and it has been postponed until August 18th. At that point, we'll be discussing mapping of the cemetery project, fundraising, and event planning. So that's on August 18th.
Okay,
So we're working on it.
all right, thank you, Ralph.
Thank-
Is Warren there now? You see Warren?
Am I unmute, muted? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Warren, I just want to make sure that you were there because I can't see you.
Oh, I don't know. Something's a little strange. Can you hear me?
I can
Oh,
hear
yeah.
you.
hear you.
Okay, I'm here.
Can you hear
Somewhere.
us? Can you hear me?
I can.
All right,
Okay.
great, thank you. Yeah, at this point, as I said in my amendment to the agenda, I'm going to have a period for public comment on agenda items only. So anybody who would like to comment on an agenda item is welcome to. I'd like you to, and I assume everybody has signed in to the attendance sheet. If you haven't, please do. And then when we finish that, we'll get to public comment on agenda items only.
So we can do comments for everyone in the room. Then if someone wants to comment that's on Zoom, ask that you raise your hand, use the raise hand feature. And after, I'll unmute you.
Okay, thank you, John. I was reminded today that we actually have in our rules of procedure for the town board, a provision for public comment on agenda items only. When I was on the board, there never was any public comment on agenda items only. People always waited till the end, so I dropped that, but I'm happy to bring it back. So who would like to make a comment on agenda item only? Louise?
I'm Louise Merriman. I didn't think I was going to have a chance to comment, so I did send the board members late in the day an email. Some of you may have seen it, some of you may have not. My husband and I moved from Stanfordville in 1991 to Chicago. We have lived there 31 years. In those 31 years, I have not once seen a Millerton police officer anywhere in the vicinity. And I can guarantee you none of the neighbors have. And in the 5 times over those 31 years that a call to the police has had to be made to come to our property, it has always been answered primarily by the state police and alternatively once or twice by the county sheriff. They were professional, they were efficient. I had no complaints. It hadn't really occurred to me until this policing issue really came into discussion. Well, really back when Governor Cuomo required all towns to redo their policing regulations. But I have looked back over a lot of things since we've lived here. That is one thing that comes to my mind. So in thinking about that, that's one reason I am not enthused about my tax dollars going to pay police, the Millerton police. I'm not sure that people who live in the town, different from the village, actually get much benefit out of it. Secondly, I have my impression, and I admit this is from the outside, has never been very positive from the local police when I see them interacting, which is rare, but I see them making traffic stops. And I've personally had people who work for me or friends stopped completely unnecessarily and treated as though they were already convicted, or they were just assumed, whatever they looked like, whatever they did, the assumption was not in their favor. So I have never had a particularly positive view of that. Regardless of that, what I find really upsetting is that something that's very fact-based has been turned into something that turns resident against resident. There's a movement to, as though anyone who thinks it might be beneficial to have more coverage from the state police and the county sheriff, that's not why they're saying that. It's because they want to get rid of the Millerton police. I never felt that. I thought the mayor and the village board handled this really professionally. They brought forward facts. They brought forward people who could answer questions you were going to the source. You weren't getting secondhand information. And I am so, appalled is the word that comes to my mind, to see in my community that attitude that we've come to know so well on the national level. And I see only benefits from trying to do better. Have a police force that that is more what the community is asking for, which is community policing and public safety, as far as I can tell. And having the sheriff come and speak and people answer questions, that came across as being something foremost in what they have to offer. And I just hope that when the board makes this decision, they're going to be thinking about what is best for the town. We can do better than what we have. We wouldn't have this big hullabaloo if everybody was happy, So I don't like the intimidation of this sort of movement that has grown up, and I think we all need to step aside from that. And we need to look at the facts, and we need to vote accordingly. I, for one, strongly support making the change to the New York State Police and the Dutchess County Sheriff. And I think that a vote to, let's just do it one more year, that really comes as sort of, we're complicit, if that is not.
Louise,
the policing
we
law-
have a 5-minute limit.
Okay,
Just,
okay,
that was
you get
the,
my point.
that was
You get my
the bell.
Okay.
Are there others who would like to comment on agenda items only?
I understand, along with what Louise was saying, it's never been discussed, and I've never heard it said, but it needs to be understood that the Millerton Police Department is completely insubordinate to the mayor. If she asks for some information, she doesn't get it. She's been receiving threats on her phone. And if you had an employee that treated you the way the officer in charge treats the mayor, you let that person go immediately. There's no way that person could stay. And the Millerton Police Department doesn't seem to have any oversight. So they're just a rogue department, and they're doing whatever they want, however they want to do it. So if they have the courage to treat the mayor that way, imagine what they'll do if they pull somebody over who they decide they don't like. This has to end. It's getting kind of dangerous, and the mayor is really concerned for her own welfare. Thank you.
Are there others who would like to comment on agenda items only?
Yes, I've lived here,
Can you state your name?
Israel,
And,
Ridge. I have a blacksmith shop down in town. And I lived here with my 3 kids, well, my 2 kids, my daughters. And we've been pulled over before by the Millington Police Department. I was coming through here for not putting my high beams down fast enough. And I'm just taking my kids home from the bed. And I've been pulled over at least 3 times by only Millington police officers. Again, I've never gotten a ticket because they kept asking me if I was drinking multiple times. And to the point where my daughter was like, "That's okay," because I was getting frustrated I don't drink, for one thing. So to have that insinuating comment continuously 4 times to me was very frustrating. And yeah, just being pulled over on multiple occasions, never getting a ticket because there really wasn't a really good reason to pull me over. If you are going to decide to keep the Millington Police Department, then you need to have oversight, and that would be your responsibility. So if you do choose that, you need to do that. This is your choice. So whatever they do falls on you because you're making that choice. So I hope that you realize that, because there are other people that I know that have even less poor experiences with the Millington Police Department. And I'm not saying that I've had terrible experience with all of them. It's just on the occasions that I have, and from the comments and that I've heard from my friends, it could get dangerous. Actually, it is getting dangerous from some of the comments I've heard from my friends about things that have happened. So, yeah, please think very carefully about your decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Rains, as far as the contract that you guys will be signing, I don't think it should be done. And if it's agreed to sign the contract with the village of Millington, should consider having a committee, at least a committee that is capable of supervise the police department. Because the reason why we are in the state is because there's no committee members that were able to do the job that it's supposed to.
Thank you. Any other comments on agenda items only? Hearing none. Oh, Mr. Kish.
Bill Kish, I live in town Northeast, and yeah, I was somewhat surprised to see that there was going to be a resolution on renewing the contract with the village for police services. You know, we all know, and it's been discussed here, that the relationship between the police department and the head of the police department and the village board and the mayor is dysfunctional. I was present at the public hearing where Officer Veeder actually read a list of interactions that the police department had with the mayor out in public, which I consider to be a violation of public trust. It seems to me that as a town board right now, you have the opportunity to decide whether or not you want to buy into this particular service. And it seems like there's a desire to do so. And maybe the reason is just that the town and the village want to maintain a neighborly relationship, and we want to have shared services like we talked about a little earlier. It's great to have a roller that doesn't break down. When the roller breaks down, you can fix it. Bob can fix it. When the police department breaks down, you guys aren't going to fix it. There's nobody in the town who's going to fix it. So why are you buying that service? As a taxpayer in the town, I do not want this. I would rather have the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office patrol or not patrol as they see fit in the town of Northeast. I also have not seen any recent patrols in my neighborhood. I did have a police officer stop by my house when I had a illegal burn a while ago to check into it, which was fine, but there was no reason for them to be there. It wasn't, that was problematic. And the other thing that strikes me is that, and I've been coming to town board meetings for years, whenever we've had a police report, it's really contained no useful details that allows us to determine whether or not the police are actually performing any services that are useful to us. You know, they'll say we had so many arrests, we had so many stops, we had so many this and that, but we don't know any details about that. And I've asked for them, never seen them. One time a more detailed report was accidentally posted, and that actually had useful information. And a lot of the incidents that were listed, or the activities that were listed, turned out to be things like replying to FOIL requests, or responding to another police agency that was looking for information on a local resident. So, you know, these are activities that are being listed as policing activities that are really clerical activities. So I would say, you know, at this point in time, don't enable this problematic thing in the village, or at least let the village handle it. But let's not become a part of it. Let's not bring it into the town, and let's not use town monies, which could be used for better purposes, even for one more year, to continue to enable the situation.
Thank you. Any other comments on agenda items only?
I'm in
Yeah.
total agreement with everything I've heard. I'm in total agreement. I'm in favor of contracting with the sheriff's department. I think everybody in town knows that. I told everybody. It totally erases the liability. You know, we have now. If there was ever a huge lawsuit, something was done, the town and the village could not afford it. We could bankrupt the town and the village, but by hiring the sheriffs, it totally erases that liability.
Just for the record, can you state your name?
Oh, Rob Cooper.
Yep, I know, but that's why it's on there. Any others? Public comment on agenda items only at this time. Yes, yes, ma'am. You state your name?
My name is Kras, I live on Highland Street. It seems, let's hate the police is just an everyday occurrence. These people put on the uniform, and if you're in trouble, who you call? You call the police. Police department is on Route 22. If you have to wait for a troop K to come on Route 44, you're gonna wait a long time. And I feel with the influx of all the people on the route, all these new people coming up from the city, who also had a defund the police situation going on, and they're very happy to come up here and enjoy our streets and enjoy the freedom of living in Neverton. So let's hate the police is not a good idea. They strap on a gun and a badge every day. In New York City, you strap on the gun and the badge and you are dead meat. They have a lot of responsibility. And I think as a community, see somebody wearing a badge and I'm a person. I'm not gonna have my purse stripped from me by three teenagers. People come up here because it is safe up here. And it's always safe up here. And I think you can thank these people.
Thank you. Any other comments on agenda items only? You, no. There's a public comment period at the end of our agenda. If there are no
Let me
other,
just, does anyone online, either in the chat or raise your hand, want to make a public comment? Not seeing any hands raised. that one sooner.
Okay. In that case, we're going to move on.
Actually, I just saw one, sorry.
Oh, wait a minute. While you do that, I think I'm gonna open the door back here, get some more air in here.
Meg Winkler. Meg Winkler.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, Meg.
Oh, hi. Thank you. This is Meg Winkler from the town of Northeast. This is regarding the police contract. I really wish there had been more opportunities to speak as a community with our board about different points of view. I am disappointed the police have not given a log since March of this year, limiting the transparency that we all deserve as community members. I also wish that the narrative hadn't changed regarding this issue, and that it's not really about defunding the police, rather than what I'm concerned about is a false sense of safety that people believe our Millerton police can do for 1/3 of the time. Having family and law enforcement currently and for generations, I really respect and understand all the training and performance professionalism that county sheriffs and state police have, especially surrounding issues of mental health, domestic violence, and substance abuse issues that, in looking at the previous police blogs, I'd have to say 99% of the time, if not, 95%, these are the issues that our area really has challenges with. So I am not for the town renewing its contract, and I do wish that we could have more public comments and time to discuss this really important issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
And anyone else who would like to make a comment, either raise your hand or type in the chat. I don't see any.
All right. In that case, let me know if you do, but in that case, we're gonna move on to.
See one?
Sherry's iPhone.
All right, we got one more.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Sherry.
Sorry, this is my first time doing the speaking thing on here, so I had to find it. This is Sherry Lemire. I just wanted to say I've been in this town for many years when we had the diner and everything, way back from Chief Briggs, Richie Howard, all of them. And I've seen a lot of good things that they have done. And even up until now, I know several police officers, sheriffs, Dutchess County, state police, all of them. And I am for all police, but I just feel like if you have to wait at least 15, 20, half hour for somebody to come from somewhere to save you possibly from somebody either breaking in your house or possibly, someone having a heart attack. I know there's been several cases where they have showed up on scene, the Millerton police, and they were first on scene even before ambulances and everything, because people work and a lot of it is, volunteer. I've done that too. So I understand all of that. And I'm just putting my point out there that I've seen the good in a lot of the Millerton police as well. And I've also been stopped by them, and I wasn't treated rudely or anything. So I just wanted to put my point out there that I feel like I wish people were allowed to vote on this and make a decision wholeheartedly and then go from there, instead of like, it feels like, a lot of people have already made up their mind that they're going to defund them before anybody gets a chance to even vote. And that's what I had to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more?
Yes.
Okay, Jennifer?
Hi, everyone. This is Jennifer Hand. It's more of a question. I know this is a comment period, but I guess as I'm listening to everybody, I'm a little unclear as to what the hours are, like how many hours we're getting for the 20,000 of tax dollars we're paying. And also how often the Millerton police actually come into the town outside of the village, or whether we're just supporting the village, or whether they're actually responding to calls outside of the village. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, not seeing anyone else raise their hand, so with that, we will move on.
All right, thank you, John. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the town supervisor to renew a contract with Dutchess County for participation in the county snow and ice control program. This is a initiative of Dutchess County in which they ask whether towns can remove snow and ice from certain roads in the town. And we have had this contract with the county for the past, well, for quite a few years. Bob, can you tell me sort of roughly what percentage of the roads we are covering for them? Or how much of the roads we're covering for them?
As far as the county roads in Northeast, I would say probably 30%.
Okay. They pay the town for removing snow and ice from county roads. And our experience in this program has been a positive one for the town. And so with that, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the resolution authorizing me to renew the contract with Dutchess County.
So moved.
Thank you, Griff.
Second.
Second by Lana. Roll call on this one?
Yes, we do.
Okay, in that case,
Supervisor Cannon,
aye.
Councilman Morrison. Aye. Councilman Fideli,
Aye.
Councilman Midwood,
Aye.
and Councilman Cooper.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. The next item on the agenda is we have had a request for a water connection to Northeast Water District Number 1 for a water connection at 20K Road, parcel 7271-00-741560. And the town of Northeast would like to request the village to provide water service to this property. And the town board needs to approve our request to the village to provide water service to this property. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the request.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Does that give us everything we need? The really exciting and happy thing which happened this past week was the announcement by New York State that the town of Northeast has been awarded bronze certification for its Climate Smart Communities program. This is a program which actually previous supervisor George Kay encouraged the town to enter into. It's a voluntary program with New York State, which provides the potential for grant funding priority for towns that complete certain number of actions, which are aimed at mitigating the effects of climate change and reducing the impact of the growth of greenhouse gas emissions. The town has a climate smart task force, which is chaired by Kathy Chow, which has worked for certainly I'm going to say 3 or more than 3 years on this. It's an incredible amount of volunteer work, all of it unpaid. I cannot tell you how many hours, but it's in the hundreds and hundreds of hours of volunteer time that has been put into this. There are only, I think, 2 other towns in Dutchess County that have achieved bronze recognition for their climate smart programs. And so it's a real distinction, and we may be the smallest town or one of the smallest towns that has ever done that. Anyway, I'm really thrilled that we have this. On the back wall, on the right of the back wall is the actual plaque, which was delivered to the town on Wednesday by the Regional Commissioner of New York DEC. And it's a very encouraging and positive step forward for this town. So I just want to take a minute to thank Kathy Chow and all the members of the Climate Smart Communities Task Force for their amazing amount of work and their dedication to getting us to this point.
I would just like to extend a thanks to you, Chris, on behalf of the town board. When Chris first came on the board as a councilman, this is something that then at the time Supervisor Kay said maybe you should look into kind of taking the lead on this climate smart initiative. And Chris did that, and after with a lot of input from other folks, here we are, and we are now a climate smart community. So thank you for your work.
Well, it's been a team effort for sure. So I'm really happy about it. I'm really proud of the work that the task force has done. The next item, we have an appropriate sound backdrop for it. Has to do with the police contracts. We are all aware that the Village of Millerton has been working to resolve the best way to provide police service and protection to the village, including the possibility of contracting with Dutchess County Sheriff for police coverage in lieu of maintaining its own standalone police department. At last month's town board meeting, there was a discussion regarding the renewal of a contract between the town of Northeast and the Village of Millerton for police services in the town. At that time, I informed the board that we had not received a proposed contract from the village. We also discussed whether the absence of a contract would mean that our town court, and by the way, this is our town court that we're sitting in, would not have security. And I responded that we had assured the court that we would find a way to provide the court with security regardless of what the village decided to do. In the budget that we prepared for the town, and which was approved last November, the town allocated $27,000 for police services going forward and for a contract going forward, reflecting an intention on the part of the town to renew its contract. Since our last meeting, the town has received a proposed contract from the village for a 1-year extension of our contract at $30,000 for the year and discontinuing the Village Town Joint Police Committee. We have also received a separate proposed contract from the village for the provision of police security for the town court. I have asked our town attorney to review the contracts and to bring back to the board a contract for the amount originally budgeted by the town of $27,000. He has done so along with a resolution authorizing the town to sign both contracts. In the time since our last meeting, I've had the opportunity to discuss this issue with many residents of both the village and the town. I've heard people both pro and con the village continuing with the NPD. And I've also heard very differing opinions as to whether the town should increase its support for the village for police coverage, or whether, on the other hand, it should discontinue that support completely. And I have to say that there are no easy answers. Members of the town board are asked to use their experience, their knowledge of the community, and their best judgment as to the long-term interests of the town of Northeast. I know that all of the board members have thought long and hard about this issue and spoken to a lot of people. Speaking only for myself, I do wonder about the value of a standalone, part-time police force for a village of 900 residents. At the same time, I realize that the village is in the middle of a process to resolve this issue for itself. And while that process is going on, and in the interest of having time to thoughtfully consider what we will want to put in our budget for next year, a process that begins in 2 months, I am prepared to approve both of these contracts at this time. So with that, what I'd like to do is see if there is a motion to approve the resolution, which we have. And then I would invite comment from members of the town board before we vote on that. So could you read the resolution? If you,
Sorry about.
do you need water?
I'm okay, I think. Okay. Resolution authorizing the town supervisor to execute agreements with the Village of Millerton to provide, through their police department, a court officer for the town justice court and for police services in the town. Whereas the Village of Millerton is empowered to operate and does maintain a police department in accordance with the provisions of New York State Law, Section 800. And whereas the town of Northeast does not operate or maintain a police department, but is empowered to enter into agreement on a contractual basis with the village for the provision of police protective services by the Village of Millerton Police Department pursuant to Section 119(0) of the General Municipal Law. And whereas the town and village have for many years entered into agreements providing in relevant part for the provisions of police services by the Village of Millerton Police Department to the town of Northeast, and to provide one or more court officers for the town of Northeast Justice Court. And whereas the town board has been advised that the Village of Millerton is currently considering the possibility of dissolving the Village of Millerton Police Department, but to date, no final determination of dissolution has been made. And whereas the current contract for police protection by the Village of Millerton Police Department expired on May 31st, 2022, including the provision of court officers by the Village of Millerton Police Department for the Justice Court. And whereas the town of Northeast has determined that it is in the best interest of the town and its citizens to continue the agreements for police services and court officers, with certain modifications made as reflected in the 2 agreements which have been reviewed and modified by the attorney to the town and have been found to be acceptable in form and content. And whereas the town of Northeast has determined that this is a type 2 action under seeker, which does not require environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the town supervisor to execute the agreement for police services and the agreement for court officers with the Village of Millerton in their current forms or substantially similar form acceptable to the town supervisor and the attorney to the town.
Okay, thank you. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Motion by Elena Morrison,
Second.
second by John Woodward. Are there any comments from the board?
Are
before
we lumping the 2 contracts together?
Yes, we're, the resolution authorizes the supervisor to
All right.
approve.
Well, then I have a problem. I can support the resolution to cover police at the court meetings. But I'd like to reserve my comments. I have some written comments here having to do with the other part of the resolution. And I don't know whether I should do it now or wait.
Let me just ask, Warren, is there a way in which the resolution can we can separate a resolution into two resolutions, one for the court security and a second for police services in the town.
Yes. Yes, I prepared two separate contracts, but I prepared one resolution. But
Right.
if the board wants to amend the resolution so that you would first vote on the funding for court officers, and then vote on the resolution for to allow the signing of the contract, we can deem that so amended.
So in the resolution, what I would suggest is that the last paragraph, resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the town supervisor to execute the agreement for police services with the village of Milton in their current form or substantially similar form acceptable to the town supervisor and the attorney to the town. That takes out the agreement for the court officers. Would you agree, Warren?
Yeah, I wasn't sure what you did. Did you
Okay,
take out from the
so-
resolution? I think we
so-
wanted to do is leave in the resolution for vote on the court officers and then have a separate vote on the second contract for the services. Is that what you want to
Okay,
do?
yeah, so let's have the first one be on the court officers, which means that
Yes, let's do
that
that.
the resolve that the town board hereby authorizes the town supervisor to execute the agreement for court officers with the village of Milton.
So
Okay.
Lana made a motion, I second.
Okay, so
You're
Lana
good.
made that motion and seconded by John. This is for court officers.
Okay, roll call?
No, I want to ask whether any board members have a comment on this one before we vote on it.
So we're separating.
We're separating-
Village officer, secure the court.
Security for the court from the contract before police services.
Okay.
All
I'm
right.
curious if the board voted against the latter. how-
We
how
haven't got there yet. So we're one step at a time where there was a motion and a second for the court officer. Now, before a roll call, if anyone wants to make a comment on that, anyone on the board, they're welcome to.
All right. In that case, I would, we have a motion and a second for the resolution authorizing me to sign the court officer contract. Yes,
Okay, Supervisor Cannon,
aye.
Councilman Cooper,
Aye.
Councilman Fidelli,
Aye.
Councilman Midwood,
Aye.
Councilwoman Morrison.
Okay, so we would now have a second resolution identical to the first, except for the paragraphs that starts with resolved, that the town board hereby authorizes the town supervisor to execute the agreement for police services with the village of Milton in their current forms or substantially similar form acceptable to the town supervisor and the attorney to the town. I need a motion and a second for this separate resolution. Motion by Lana Morrison,
Yes.
yeah,
Second.
seconded by John Midwood. Okay, is there comment? Ralph, I think you wanted to make a comment now?
Yes, I do. Thank you. As a member of the Joint Police Services Committee, I have given a great deal of thought to the Milton police issue. I have carefully listened to all of the comments voiced during the last two police forums and those voiced to the town board at our last meeting. This is a very difficult decision for me to make, but I have decided to vote against the proposal extending town support for the upcoming year. I have many good friends on both sides of this question. I understand that this has become a polarizing political issue, and I'd like to explain why I've decided to vote this down. I just have one more paragraph here. Extending support for the Milton Police does not give town taxpayers valued for the expense. It is a part-time service and exposes the village to costly liability in the event of a police lawsuit. The militant police rarely go beyond the village. And on occasion, I've seen them at the junction of 22 and 199 for traffic violations. It is a redundant service already covered by state troopers and county sheriffs and is already paid for in our tax bills. And that's why I am going to turn this one down.
Any other comments?
Yeah, have we ironed out the issue of whether or not the village police department is dissolved? Coming year, what our contract, what happens to our contract? Have we resolved this issue?
Warren,
Yeah,
if the village were to dissolve the Milton Police Department during this contract year, what happens to our contract?
yeah, we have a provision in that that allows for immediate dissolution or revocation of the contract rather than waiting 90 days. So the contract would be of no further force and effect in that event.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, as far as the court services are concerned, I think the resolution just says police. So it does not specify militant police. That police could also mean state troopers or, county sheriffs.
That is
It
a
just says
contract with the
police.
Village of Millerton to provide a police officer from the Village of Millerton for coverage of the court. If the
Oh, okay.
if the Millerton Police Department were to be dissolved, we
Okay.
would make arrangements with the sheriff, with the state police, or with some other security service. for
Okay.
that.
Yeah, we do have an obligation to cover our court with police protection, so.
If any more?
Well, there's been a lot of comments here tonight about if the contract should be renewed for a year. How could we go about having stronger, more comprehensive oversight? So I'm curious if we've elucidated a provision in the contract about stronger oversight. I understand the former police committee was not well received. But there should at least be a consideration for the prevailing notion that the village police department, this contract should just be accepted and everything goes about for the next 365 days unfettered.
The contract does provide for quarterly meetings between the supervisor, the deputy supervisor, the mayor, and the deputy mayor for that purpose. So we would be bringing, it is a cumbersome structure. We are contributing to something which is managed by a different entity. So it is not a perfect way to do things. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'll make a comment. So I feel this, the issue of police services between the town and the village and the town, predominantly by the village and the village board, is currently being investigated. There's action, there's been hearings, there's action on that front. So the reason why I will vote in favor of taking the $27,000 that we set aside in our budget, and that the village also, when they were making their budget, has planned on those funds. The town and the village at this time have a great working relationship. We do a lot of shared services. We have a highway garage we're working together on. There's many other programs that we're collaborating with, and I feel I don't want to, while they're working through this process, hold the funding that they were planned in their budget and we're counting on. That's one of the reasons why I am voting that I will cast my vote in favor of extending the contract for one more year until we see what happens.
Great.
Mr. Cooper raised a question of liability. How much liability does the town absorb as opposed to the village?
Warren, the contract, I think, specifies that the liability for the police department rests with the village. Is that correct?
Yeah, the primary liability, and we're indemnified by there's a provision in the contract for them to cover cover us under their insurance policy. We would, of course, have to have our own insurance cover us too, in the event of liability, but the primary responsibility would be the village, and they would indemnify us if there was a claim asserted against the town for negligence of the police department that we were not, of course, involved in. And by the way, the contract does provide for, can be terminated on 90 days notice, just so you're aware of that.
How long would it take us to contract with the Dutchess County Sheriffs?
Excuse me?
How long would it take us to contract with the Dutchess County Sheriffs?
Well, we would have to we would have to decide what coverage we want from the Dutchess County Sheriffs. Where you wanted. Yeah, it's a whole big thing. Where did you want to station them in the town? Yeah, we haven't, it's a hypothetical question really at this point. Any other comments from the board?
But we already have coverage from state and county. We're paying for it.
Yeah.
As every other town, even if you go across the border into Connecticut, it's the same thing. They do not have local village police or town police. They have county.
They don't even have county.
State police. They have state police.
All right, if there are no other questions or comments. Could you
A roll
conduct
call.
a roll call?
Yeah.
Supervisor Cannon,
Aye.
Councilman Cooper,
Aye.
Councilman Fidelli,
Hey,
Councilman Midwood,
Aye.
Councilwoman Morrison.
Aye. Okay. The next item on our agenda is a resolution to permit retail cannabis dispensaries in the town. As people are most likely aware, when New York State decided to permit the possession and use of cannabis, it also authorized, it created a whole structure for not only the sale of cannabis products, but also for agriculture, for growing, for the transportation, for the distribution. It is quite a structure that has been created. The town was, all towns in New York State were asked whether they wanted to, at that time, to, were given the opportunity to opt out of having cannabis dispensaries and cannabis on-site retail consumption, equivalent of a bar, I believe. And towns were given the opportunity to opt out of having either of those in their town. One of the wrinkles with that was that if towns did not opt out, they were automatically opted in. And therefore, the town of Northeast, but it also provided that the town could then subsequently change its mind and opt in to permitting either of those. But if the town did not opt out, it was locked in, and they could not change their mind. And at that time, the town voted to opt out of permitting both retail dispensaries and on-site retail consumption. And one of the reasons for doing that was that it was a very new program, which was really given to towns very quickly, and which was sort of hard to figure out exactly what was going to be involved in doing that. Since that time, we have learned a lot. We have learned, for instance, that we have a number of cannabis producers who are now in the town, licensed and regulated by the State Department of Agriculture. The town has no role, the town itself has no permitting role in that. And we also know a lot more about how retail dispensaries or on-site consumption facilities would be, if we were to permit them, would be regulated. One of the concerns that I had at that time about this was the extent to which the town would have a role in, if we did vote to permit retail dispensaries, would have the extent to which the town would have a role in that. And one of the things that is now clear and is stated in the state regulations is that there is a requirement for a potential licensee to notify the town if the town expresses an opinion either for or against a potential licensee. Such opinion becomes part of the record and must be considered by the Office of Cannabis Management prior to the issuance of the license. Another question that I had wondered about was to what extent the town could control where a cannabis dispensary would be located. And that is very clearly stated that that is a decision for the town in its zoning to decide where in their town they would permit that. And that's very consistent with a lot of other decisions that the towns will make in terms of what is permitted and here what is not in terms of location. There is language concerning signage, which I know is of interest to a lot of us in this town. And there is signage, signage is permitted limited to the following information: business or trade name, business location, the nature of the business. It can be affixed to a building or permanent structure, are both limited to 1,600 square inches, are not illuminated by neon lights, are not on vehicles, do not total more than 2 in number per licensee. So I think you can see that there's been a lot of work that has gone into deciding how these should be regulated. My feeling about this is, and my feeling about this last year actually was not any different. I felt this is something that the town has the potential to derive economic benefit for as a legal product. A lot of, as I think everybody in the world knows, there are places such as Great Barrington in Massachusetts, which have derived a real windfall of tax revenues from cannabis dispensaries. If the town were not to permit retail dispensaries and the village were to permit them, which they have, the town would not derive any tax revenue from that. If both the town and the village, I have the language of it in here, but essentially both the town and the village permit retail dispensaries that tax revenue is divided between the town and the village. For instance, if the village were to have a dispensary and the town has permitted one, but doesn't have one, the town still gets a share of the tax revenue. Likewise, if the town has one and the village doesn't, but the village has permitted it, it also gets to share in that. The rate at which that is shared is by agreement between the town and the village, or if there is no agreement, it is 50-50. In any event, when we opted out last year, I did tell people who came to that meeting that we would reserve the right to come back and take another look at this year. And I have spent quite a bit of time looking at this, and I feel comfortable that this is something which has potential economic benefit to the town. And therefore I am supporting changing our opt-out on retail dispensaries. We're not taking up at this time on-site cannabis lounges. So Warren, with that, I'd like to, can you tell us how we go about making that approval at this point?
Yes. So the way we opt in on this is to pass a local law rescinding the local law which opted out last year. So I've prepared such a local law, and it is in proper form for proceeding with the local law adoption process. So the only thing you have to decide tonight is to move forward with setting a date for the public hearing on the adoption of this local law. We would have the public hearing on that date. The public would be permitted to weigh in on this, but it's not subject to a permissive referendum or mandatory referendum. And then the town board, after the conduct of the public hearing, would vote to either adopt or not adopt the local law. If you adopt the local law, then you've opted in for retail sales. And the next step would be that town, after proper filing of the local law with the state, would proceed to work on amending its zoning code to accommodate that use within the.
Okay, so we are then tonight only considering the resolution commencing the local law process?
That's correct.
Okay. So we have a resolution which I will ask our town clerk.
Sorry.
Want water?
I'm okay. Thank you. Okay, resolution commencing the local law adoption process, rescinding local law number 2 of the year 2021, which was entitled a local law opting out of allowing cannabis retail dispensaries as authorized under New York State Cannabis Law Article 4. Whereas on March 31st, 2021, Governor Andrew Cuomo signed the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, legalizing adult use cannabis, as known as marijuana or recreational marijuana in New York State. The legislation creates a new Office of Cannabis Management, OCM, governed by the Cannabis Control Board to oversee and implement the law, collectively referred to as OCM. The OCM will issue licenses and develop regulations outlining how and when business can participate in the new industry. The OCM will also oversee the state's existing medical marijuana program and cannabinoid hemp program, previously regulated by the Department of Health. And whereas the New York State law provides that towns can opt out of allowing adult use cannabis retail dispensaries and or on-site consumption facilities from locating within their jurisdiction, but to do so, the municipality must pass a local law by December 31st, 2021. And if the town fails to do so, the town will be unable to opt out in a future date. And whereas the Town of Northeast Town Board determined that it was in the best interest of the town to opt out of the on-site retail dispensaries within its jurisdiction, And whereas the town board duly adopted local law number 2 of the year 2021, which was entitled a local law opting out of allowing cannabis retail dispensaries as authorized under the New York State Cannabis Law, Article 4. And whereas the local law was duly filed with the Office of the Secretary of State on November 5th, 2021. And whereas the said local law was also duly filed with the Office of Cannabis Management as required by law. And whereas the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act provides in relevant part that a municipality that has opted out of allowing town retail dispensaries as authorized under the New York State Cannabis Law, Article 4, may reverse that decision by enacting a local law rescinding the local law opting out under the cannabis retail dispensary law. And whereas the town board has determined that it would be in the best interest of the town and its citizens to allow for cannabis retail dispensaries as authorized under New York State Cannabis Law, Article 4, and whereas the attorney to the town has prepared a local law rescinding local law number 2 of the year 2021, which has been reviewed and approved by the town board for the purposes of commencing the local law adoption process. Now therefore, be it resolved that the town board hereby accepts proposed local law number 1 of the year 2022 entitled a local law rescinding local law number 2 of the year 2021. Which was entitled a local law opting out of allowing cannabis retail dispensaries as authorized under New York State Cannabis Law, Article 4, for the purposes of commencing the local law adoption process. And be it further resolved that the town board hereby schedules a public hearing on the adoption of the local law for a
I
date.
think we would schedule it for the next board meeting, which is August 11th, I believe,
August 11th.
at 7:20 PM. What?
6:05. Yeah.
That's,
Okay.
we're going to change that to 7:20.
Okay.
We don't need it 6:05
August 11th, 2022 at 7:20 PM at the town hall, at the town of Northeast Town Hall. And be it further resolved that the town board is, the town clerk is hereby directed to publish and give notice of said public hearing as required by law and make a copy of the local law available for review by the public on the town's website and at the town hall.
Thank you very much. Any comments from the board? Nope.
I think we should, I support opting into cannabis lounges. I think it'd be a good source of tax
And to be
revenue.
clear, when you said cannabis
Oh,
lounge.
I said dispensaries, pardon me. Cannabis dispensaries, I think it'd be a good source of tax revenue for the town. And, you know, if you need a motion, I'd be happy to make that motion.
I would welcome a motion.
Second.
Seconded by Ralph. Any other comments?
Nope.
Otherwise-
Everybody comes to the public hearing.
Roll call?
Supervisor Cannon,
Aye.
Councilman Cooper,
Aye.
Councilman Fideli,
Aye.
Councilman Midwood,
Aye.
Councilwoman Morrison.
Aye. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes of the town board meeting of June 9th, 2022. And those minutes were sent to members of the town board.
Yes.
And I would like just to say that our town clerk has been keeping really great minutes, and
Thank you.
it's a lot of work, but they're very good. And we have had, I think, no corrections that have had to be made until now. But saying that, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the town board meeting of June 9th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion is approved.
Aye.
Nays? Motion is approved. The next item on our agenda is public comments period. And just remind members of the public that we have a time limit of 5 minutes. But any members of the public would like to comment at this time?
On the wider note, I'd like to thank Tom for making me a nicer place to drive. That was a little cheap, so thank you.
McGee?
Yeah.
It's County Road.
Of that county?
But you know what? I'm sure he'll take it anyway.
So I'm interested in the public hearing that's going to occur on the cannabis dispensaries. And is there any way that the board can provide prior to that meeting information on what requirements the state has imposed for cannabis dispensaries so that we can understand what we're buying into? Particularly concerned about, for example, if the state requires that you have a lot of lights around them at night because of security issues, we might have light pollution, or if the state requires that they have chain link fences around them, want to know about that. So before we, have an opportunity to comment, it would be great if the town board could ensure that the public knew what it was that we were commenting on.
I think that's a very fair request, and I will see to it that we have that information put on the website.
Dan
Yeah.
Sternberg, East. Similar question, slightly different vein. I was pleased to hear that you described the process, the permission that the town has from the government to the state to establish a certain regulation related time, place, and manner of the dispensaries. I guess the question I would have, the request I would make, is that given that if the state, if all things go as the state wants, there could be these dispensaries developing rather quickly. And I would urge the town to move equally quickly and hopefully perhaps even in time to have it published for the connection with the public hearing to see what the town's regulations are proposed to be, to regulate, to take advantage of our ability to regulate the certain aspects, at least, of the dispensaries. Because we may need to, it may not be possible to do that post facto once the dispensary is open. And so there may be, I think there may be some sense of urgency. And I think we all know that ability to amend our zoning laws is something rapid than we might otherwise like. And so I think there is some urgency with respect to that. And getting its act together and figuring out what, if anything, it wants to do to take advantage of that power that we have.
Warren, are there other towns which have, there are other towns in the county which have either earlier last year or this year opted into permitting retail dispensaries. Have other towns started working on how they will permit dispensaries to be established and so on in their towns?
Yes, Pine Plains opted in for the retail. And we are in the process of putting a cannabis zoning amendment into, not into effect, but for public vetting and consideration. So we should have an example of that shortly. To be honest, I'm not sure what other towns in this area have opted in at this point. I think Hyde Park was going to, they opted out last year and are opting in, but I don't know whether they've reached a point where they've voted on that and have passed legislation. But if we are going to be passing if we're opting in, we certainly will be looking at what other municipalities have done, try to come up with the best law we can to regulate these businesses.
I would like to, there's certainly a lot of other towns outside of Dutchess County in New York State that are in this situation as well. But I think it's a very fair question. And I'm going to reach out to the Association of Towns and to see what guidance they can provide us and try and have that as well. And understanding and agreeing that we would like to move this along as fast as we can, as long as we do it in a thoughtful deliberate way.
Absolutely.
I've heard liability issues concerning the Littleton Police Department. Has anybody looked at the liability concerns having a marijuana dispensary in the town and any crime that may result from that? Look at it or consider it.
We have liability arising from anything that takes place in the town. That is simply adding to the list. Road markings, road signage, slip and falls on town property. The list of potential liability of a town is enormous. And so it is, I don't know specifically of that, but it would be added to that list. Warren, do you have any comment on that, liability for the town?
You mean if we passed legislation?
Yes.
I would think there would be a certain amount of immunity from that. I mean, obviously, a municipality can be liable if it commits a negligent act. So just the fact that we've allowed it to happen, it's the same thing as allowing a liquor store in your town. The town doesn't get sued every time somebody buys a bottle of liquor, gets drunk and gets into an accident. But that's why we have insurance. And there's always people who will sue or try to sue municipalities, but it's not easy to do that, to be successful.
Same logic applies to the police department. That's why we have insurance.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear you.
The same logic would apply to the police department and the liability concerns.
What's, I'm sorry, I understood that was a
Using the same
statement.
logic, I would say that liability is a concern for the police department as well. I know we've heard that over and over again. Now it's glazed over with the dispensary, but it's an issue.
We spend a lot of time with our insurance company at the beginning of each year, going over all the different things that a town is liable for. We do not have a police department. The town does not have a police department. We do not have that liability. Any other comments?
This is real Finch. Yeah, so I've spent a lot of time up in Great Barrington, and just to state up, I think it's great that we're, legalize the marijuana. But I do have, I have spent a lot of time up there. You brought it up. There were some comments that I heard from other people in the community about really not getting a lot of revenue from those dispensaries. I didn't check into it, but I just want to bring that up because that was something that some of the people who were against the dispensaries in Great Barrington had brought up. So I didn't check into it, but I just thought maybe you might want to look at that. The other thing is the traffic. I've also been up there and there were lines of people out of some of the dispensaries. I'll say some of the traffic around the dispensaries is a little not so careful, if you will. And I just think of that because another thing has, you already have issues with the parking and traffic and noise. Again, I just wanted to bring those up because those are experiences I've had on the Great Barrington. The other thing about the police department is that I'm not against the police department. I just would like oversight of the police department just because of incidents that I am familiar with personally and what has happened to people that I know. So again, if you have the police department here, or you would like to have that contract signed with Northeast, the village. The oversight is just an important piece, and it's been in the public eye for quite a while. So that's what I'm talking about. So if you choose it, please maybe put a provision in there that says that that give the mayor some sort of teeth or some sort of ability to have oversight. It doesn't sound like it is. I mean, it doesn't sound like there's respect between the police and our local government. Thank you.
Thank you. As I understand it, the village is put out, and this is just my understanding, so don't hold me to it, but I believe the village has put out an RFP for a company to come in and do a professional, outside evaluation of the police department and its management. So that would, I think, be the first step in that. But that's what I've heard. I haven't had that in writing. Bill?
It's a different topic this time, back to the police. I'd just like to comment on what Izzy just said and also what Brian said. With respect to oversight, I don't think that anybody should reasonably expect at this point that there will be any. We've gone through that. That was one of the reasons why there was a clause in the previous contract that said that there should be a police committee whose purpose was to provide oversight. And it didn't. And now I believe that that committee is gone. Correct? If that's not
Correct.
So oversight is not something that we're trying to do. Oversight is something that the village should be able to do, but seems unable to do because they're at an impasse. So we can't expect it from the village. So, you know, maybe things will get better, maybe they won't. We'll see. You know, it is what it is, and we bought a police service for a year. So let's see what comes of it. With respect to liability, I think that what I heard going back and forth is missing the point. There is liability, as there always is. If the police were to be involved in an incident and there was to be a lawsuit in the town of Northeast, a party could sue the town. Now, the village is indemnifying this, which means that they're going to cover our legal expenses and potentially pay the judgment in the event that you know, that there's a judgment against the town. However, the village has already said that if there was a significant judgment against them, they would be bankrupt. They would not be able to cover it. So of course, they wouldn't be able to cover the same thing that happens to us. So, you know, liability is liability. There's different stages of amounts of liability. If the state explicitly says, you know, that you can, you know, as they pass these laws, said, you know, cannabis is equivalent to a liquor store in effect. Likely, as Warren said, the likelihood of somebody prevailing in a lawsuit is pretty small because, you know, the state has already set out laws for it. In the case of police matters, yeah, you know, there could be a judgment against this, and we have to take that into account. So I believe you guys have already taken that into account and are ready to accept it.
Okay.
Does anyone want to comment on Zoom? Either enter the chat or raise your hand. Yeah, that's what I do. All right, seeing none. Never mind. We gotta have it. Does anyone want to comment? You can raise your hand. So then raise your hand and then put it down.
Otherwise, we'll move on to budget adjustments.
All right, we got a comment. All right, Carolee. You gotta unmute yourself, Carolee. Carolee, do you want to make a comment? We can't hear anything. All right. So we're not hearing anything, so we're going to move on to the budget adjustment.
I have a budget adjustment number 4, 2022. For a fund, an expense increase of $4,900 less a revenue increase of $4,900 for a net of 0. Could I have a motion to approve the budget adjustment for A fund?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Budget adjustment is approved. I have a budget adjustment for DB fund for the highway town outside of the village with an expense increase of $326,051, less an expense decrease of $80,000, less a revenue increase of $246,051 for a net of zero. I have a resolution to approve the budget adjustment for the DB fund.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The budget adjustment is carried. Warren, we are at this point, I think, not in need of you unless you have anything else you need to bring to our attention at this point.
No, everything's good. I'll, good night, everybody. Keep well.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks,
Warren.
Warren.
Good night.
Thank you.
I have a special abstract dated June 22nd, 2022, totaling $17,184.96, broken down as follows. A fund, $3,730.28. B fund, $354.75. DB fund, $13,099.93. Could I have a motion to accept the special abstract?
So moved.
Ralph,
Second.
seconded by Anna. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? In that case, that is carried, and I will pass this around for your signatures. 7:14. I have an abstract dated July 14th, 2022, totaling $337,412.81. Broken down as follows. A fund, $50,022.24. B fund, $1,534.83. DB fund, $55,841.10. Capital projects, H1, $228,436.05. T and A2 escrow, $1,330, no cents. Payroll T and A, $248.59. A motion to accept the abstract.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
John, seconded by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Approved. Seven. The voucher committee for August is Lana Morrison and John Midwood. And we do not have a meeting with council. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by John, seconded by Lana. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion opposed, motion is carried. Thank you all. I would note that this is the first time that I think I've gotten through the complete agenda without having Lorna to correct me. This is what happens when she's not here.